At his father's words, Naruto bent down and picked Eri up in his arms, hugging her one last time. The little girl looked as if she was barely holding back her tears.
"I don't want you to go," she said, her voice quivering. Although she was very young, she understood that it was for her own good to go with her parents to the United States. Nonetheless, in the end, she was still a child. The pain of separation overwhelmed her rational thought. "I'll come see you every week. And we'll talk to each other through video calls, too. I'll have you teach me English." "But I don't know English."
"You're a smart girl. I'm sure you'll learn it faster than anyone."
"You think so?" she said shyly.
You're much smarter than me. You'll become an expert at English. Then you'll be my teacher. How about it, Eri-sensei?"
The girl started giggling at his words.
"Promise we'll talk every day?" she asked. "Every day? He doesn't talk to me every day, and I'm his girlfriend," Rumi said. "It's not my fault you're a workaholic who never gets home before midnight," Naruto retorted. "You should talk to Rumi Ne-san more often, Ni-san," Eri chided him. "Ah, you too, Eri. I thought you were on my side," Naruto said, faking a look of hurt.
Rumi suddenly snatched Eri from his arms, causing her to squeal and laugh. But that beautiful family moment came to an end when one of the airport workers called out the Uzumaki couple's names from the speakers, warning them that they were only 15 minutes before departure.
Giving Naruto and Rumi each one last hug, Minato, Kushina, and Eri said their final goodbyes and rushed towards their gate. Their destination: Florida, Marco Island.
Time passed, and the spring holiday came to an end. Now, he was in his third and last year at UA High.
The first 4 days of the week passed like a blur. It was Friday. Although the first week of the school year was typically more relaxed, most students couldn't wait for the weekend. If the first part of the week passed in the blink of an eye, time seemed to have slowed down to a crawl that Friday morning. By the time the lunch break came, Naruto felt as if he had been at school for 10 hours already.
Finally, the regular classes are over, he thought in relief while he was heading towards the cafeteria.
A feeling of dissociation washed over him as he walked alone on the school corridors. Even though it was going to be his third year with his classmates, he felt like a stranger among them. His classmates had gotten really close to each other. Some of them, such as Izuku and Kyoka or Mina and Kirishima, had become a couple, while others forged close friendships. Even the initially aloof Todoroki Shoto could be seen smiling sometimes nowadays, and he appeared to have gotten rather close to Yaoyorozu Momo. Kaminari and Sakura too, he thought idly as he glanced at the blonde boy and the pink-haired girl, who were walking side by side and chatting animatedly with each other.
If he had been the same person as the boy he used to be before the sludge incident nearly 3 years ago, he might have felt regretful at having become so distant from his classmates, but his current self couldn't bring himself to care.
In his past life, he wanted to be surrounded by his friends and used to revel in their attention. But in his current life, Naruto didn't need other people's acknowledgement or their attention because he had a family. His parents, his little sister, his lover, Rumi, and more recently, his soon-to-be mother-in-law. His mind was always occupied with thoughts of them.
I don't belong here. It wasn't the first time he had told himself that. Mentally, he was 2 times older than his classmates. Furthermore, he had no interest in school, because at this point, he had become so strong and proficient with his quirks, that even the hero course classes were no longer of any use in helping him improve any further. What a waste of time, he muttered softly, and let out a sigh.
Then why don't you just quit? Kurama's voice came from his back. He was hidden underneath his shirt, not showing himself to the others.
You know I can't do that. I can't become a pro hero without the diploma. Humans' customs in this world are so damn troublesome, said the fox in annoyance. If it were in our past lives, no one would care if you graduated from the academy or not. As long as you were strong. You're already the strongest in this entire school, even stronger than your teachers.
People have a saying, when in Rome, do as Romans do. I live in a society. I have to follow the rules, as stupid as they may be. And I'm not sure, I don't know if I could beat All Might. You're being too modest. If anything, I think your friend has already surpassed his teacher. What do you say? Could you beat him now, after he unlocked his other quirks? Kurama asked.
He was talking about Midoriya Izuku. After the beating that Naruto put on him nearly 3 weeks ago, something seemed to have changed in the boy. Not only that he appeared with fresh bruises on his face and arms every day, a proof of how hard he sparred with All Might in their private training sessions, but he even started to show new abilities.
The one-sided loss at the hands of Naruto had been like a wake-up call for Izuku and made him realize how far he was lagging behind the blonde. Even if he got new abilities, the gap between our fighting experience is too vast. Also, his green whip is like my chains, but weaker, and he won't have time to use that buff-like quirk in a fight against me because I'm too fast. As for that float quirk of his, it's really good, but I can fly too with your help. So I'm not any worse than him anywhere. Oi, Naruto, pass me the coke, Kurama said in a whisper. No, it's mine. You drank my coke yesterday and even stole my cupcake. If you don't hand it over willingly, I'll take it myself, the fox growled. Quiet, you asshole, Naruto shushed him. He was trying to keep Kurama's existence a secret from the others. Aside from Mirko and his family, nobody knew about him. He hadn't used Kurama in any of the practical hero classes at school so far, and he hadn't used his demonic transformation either. As far as the outside world knew, his demonic transformation was only something that occurred when his quirk went berserk. Nobody, aside from Mirko and his family, knew that he could control it now.
After everything he had been through, Naruto thought that it was wiser for him not to reveal the full extent of his ability to others. Kurama and his demonic transformation were going to be his trump cards, the aces in his sleeve, that he would not reveal until a critical moment appeared.
That being said, knowing the blonde's intentions, the fox often took advantage of him and blackmailed him to get his way. It was the same in the present as well. Naruto could do nothing but compromise. He grabbed the can of cola and took several big gulps, drinking almost half of it. Then, he took a quick glance around to make sure that nobody was paying attention to him before bringing the can down. Kurama's small arms extended under the table, and he grabbed the can with both hands before retreating under Naruto's shirt. If not for his 5 golden, large fox tails providing a decent cover, the Kurama's existence would have been revealed a long time ago. Soon, the lunch break came to an end, and the students of the 3A class all went to their lockers to change into their hero suits. Now, it was time for the hero course classes.
The appearance of his hero suit didn't change much from the first year. His pants were still black with an orange lining, and his jacket was still black, and had a large, fierce, 9-tailed fox printed on its back. As for his ambu-like mask, he had swapped it with a transparent mask that covered his lower face, and functioned as a rebreather that protected him from harmful gases.
The main thing that changed about his suit was the fabric that it was made of. Since his demon transformation always melted his clothes, Naruto chose to have his suit made of a Kevlar-like material that had a high degree of resistance against corrosive substances. Other than that, he still had his ear mufflers, 2 kunai pouches strapped to his thighs, and a utility belt with numerous pockets carrying smoke and flashbang grenades, and several rolls of ninja wire.
If anyone asked any hero course student, regardless of year, which was their favorite class, 99% of them would answer straight away. The Foundational Hero Studies class. All Might's class.
Not only was All Might still revered as the #1 hero in Japan despite his recent inactivity in the field, but, after 2 years, he had become a competent teacher too. His popularity, his experience as a hero, and his newly acquired skills as a teacher made his class the most popular class in the entire school. Currently, All Might took the 3A class to the Gamma training ground again. The theme of today's class is pursuit. All Might smiled at seeing how his students burst into excited murmurs. As you have undoubtedly experienced during your internships already, oftentimes villains will resist arrest. Sometimes, they fight head-on against the heroes, while other times they take hostages or just run away. Today, we will be focusing on the scenario where the villains try to escape. The goal of today's exercise is not only to catch the villains but also to be mindful of your surroundings and cause as little property damage as possible. You will be graded at the end of the class based on 3 criteria: whether you managed or failed to capture the villain, the time you took to capture him, the amount of property damage you have caused to your surroundings.
Now, I shall split you all into 2 groups. First, rest.
All Might's words were cut off as an ear-deafening alarm suddenly blared all across the UA High campus. The streets and buildings shook like during an earthquake as a huge metallic wall rose from the ground. Simply saying that it was enormous didn't do it justice. The wall was even taller than the main school building. Then, Principal Nezu's voice rang from the speakers installed all over the campus. UA High is under attack by the League of Villains. All students head towards the closest shelter and lock the doors behind you, just as you have practiced before. Third-year Hero Course students who have obtained their provisional hero licenses are allowed to stay behind and defend the school against villains if they so desire. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Hearing Nezu's words, Izuku and All Might were the first to rush out of the training ground.
All Might headed towards the edge of the campus and jumped on top of the tall metallic wall. Momentarily he was stupefied at the sight below.
Unlike his mentor, Izuku used his float quirk to fly up and get a bird's-eye view of the situation.
My God.
4 large purple portals were opened on each side of the UA High, and villains were pouring out endlessly. There weren't only humans, dozens of monstrous humanoid creatures were mixed among them too, and more were coming out as well.
Having followed All Might, Naruto also rushed to the top of the wall, and glanced at the army of villains surrounding the fortress that their campus had become once Principal Nezu activated the new UA barrier. It's gotta be over 1,000 of them. There were so many of them that the woods outside the UAA campus were starting to look crowded.
Sensei, we have to do something about the guy who is controlling those portals.
Don't be reckless, Uzumaki, All Might said seriously.
Taking on over 1,000 villains and dozens of Nomu creatures wouldn't have been easy for him even if he was in his prime, much less now. Don't leave the safety of the UA barrier. No matter how many of them arrive, it's impossible for them to destroy these walls. The only way to bypass them is by flying. But flying isn't a common quirk, so we don't have to go outside. We'll wait for the flying types to attack and we'll defeat them from the safety of our walls. Time is on our side. The longer this battle drags on, the more pro-heroes will arrive to our aid. Our purpose isn't to defeat all these villains but to buy enough time for Principal Nezu to evacuate all the students. Only a moment after All Might stopped speaking, the walls, the buildings, and the streets all started shaking once again. Naruto's mouth was half opened in incredulity when he looked back and saw how the entire UA High campus was divided into countless symmetrical squares, like a chessboard. Then, entire plots of land and the buildings on top of them started sinking into the ground.
It was the new defense system designed by Principal Nezu for the sake of keeping his students safe in case of a villain attack. It was a colossal project that cost an unthinkable amount of money and took nearly 2 years to build. 1. Suddenly a bestial cry rang in the distance. Then, the sky was filled with more than 50 flying creatures. Gray, green, yellow and bluish skin colors, pterodactyl-like wings and beak-like mouths filled with shark-like teeth.
Nomu, All Might said and clenched his fists. Unfortunately, that wasn't all. All Might's hopes that they would only have to confront the flying-type enemies were dashed right then and there as a massive platform of ice rose in the air, above the huge metallic wall. A silver-haired young man wearing a thick, furred winter jacket controlled an enormous amount of ice, carrying hundreds of his comrades with him to pass over the wall.
Just as the silver-haired villain was about to bring his pals over the metallic wall, his quirk unexpectedly stopped working, and the large platform of ice under his feet crumbled like sand. The villains screamed in terror as they plummeted to their deaths.
"Nice job, Eraserhead," All Might shouted and gave him an excited thumbs up. Recognizing the danger he posed, the flying Nomu dove towards Eraserhead, who was on the rooftop of a dorm building. But the mindless creatures barely got within a 10-meter distance from him before someone shouted,
"Flash Fire Fist, Hell Spider!" 5 threads of fire burst from Todoroki's fingertips and sliced through the incoming Nomu like a hot knife through butter.
Midoriya Izuku and Uzumaki Naruto were not the only 3A students who decided to stay behind and fight. The entire class did, even Sakura, who was only a medic.
A huge metallic net appeared out of nowhere and trapped another half a dozen Namu, courtesy of Momo, who created it, and Ochako, who removed its weight and threw it. Zero followed up with his tape quirk too, binding them completely. But the Namu weren't finished yet. They didn't know the meaning of giving up. Using their fierce talons and fanged beaks, they started ripping the metallic net, trapping them, string by string.
Before they could free themselves, a calm voice was heard. "Desert coffin." A large amount of sand suddenly engulfed the trapped Nomu from all sides. It was Gaara, keeping the same calm, unbothered attitude from before. He raised his right hand in the air and clenched it into a fist before saying, "Desert burial." His classmates involuntarily turned their heads away as an obscene amount of blood and gore burst out from Gaara's ultimate move. As the sand slowly returned to the large gourd strapped to his back, the others felt queasy at the sight of the brutally crushed remains of Nomu.
The 3A class wasn't the only one who remained behind. The 3B class stayed too, together with their teachers as well. Between the two classes of gifted provisional heroes and their experienced and powerful teachers, the flying-type villains and the bioengineered Namu didn't stand a chance, despite their superior numbers.
Things looked promising so far. Most of the students had already run to the shelters, which were now in the process of traveling underground and evacuating.
A powerful roar suddenly shook the skies, and then a titanic being rose from behind the huge metallic wall. Damn it! I shouldn't have listened to All Might. I knew things were only going to get worse. Naruto thought when he saw the tall man stepping out of the portal and quickly transforming into a giant over 30 meters tall. Gigantomachia. All Might recognized him. The giant in question let out another thunderous roar before he cocked his enormous fist back and smashed it into the UA barrier, creating a huge fist-shaped dent in it. Midoriya, prepare your Fajin. All Might shouted before throwing himself off the wall at Makia, intent on stopping him from destroying their fortress walls.
Detroit smash! He screamed as he threw a punch with his entire strength at his gigantic chin.
Gigantomachia groaned loudly in pain as he stumbled back from the force of the hit. But All Might didn't celebrate his small success. It barely hurt him. It wasn't the first time he had fought Gigantomachia. Whereas he had defeated him without much difficulty back in the day, the gigantic being wasn't an opponent that even the prime version of himself could take lightly.
This isn't good, he thought as a drop of blood trailed from the corner of his mouth. He had given one for all to Izuku more than 3 years ago. Although he had stopped his hero work almost entirely and focused on mentoring Izuku, his powers continued to grow weaker. Someone as tough and durable as Gigantomachia was the worst matchup possible for him in his current situation when he couldn't fight a battle of attrition. Uzumaki. All Might cried out in worry when he saw the blonde unexpectedly jump off the UA barrier, straight in the middle of the army of villains below. Despite the fact that he had fallen from a height of over 30 meters, his body didn't even register the recoil from landing. When his feet touched the ground, time seemed to have come to a standstill for a second as the villains gawked at him in disbelief, never having expected a student to be crazy enough to throw himself in their midst like that.
4. Golden chains burst from his lower back, and the villains came back to their senses. "Kill him!" they roared.
But his chains were faster than their reaction time. The 4 golden chains whipped all around him like the Grim Reaper's scythe, killing people like cutting grass.
"Don't get in my way," he said in a dangerous tone.
A sonic boom startled the already frightened villains around him and made them back away in terror. By the time they gathered their wits, he was long gone. They were momentarily horrified as they looked at the aftermath. It took him only 1 second to kill over 30 of their comrades. Their bodies were all split in half from the waist or decapitated.
Another deafening boom rang in the distance, and many villains gasped when they saw a green-haired boy kicking Gigantomachia so hard in the face that the giant was knocked down on his back, crushing nearly 10 unsuspecting people to death with the weight of his enormous body. "Do not give him any time to catch his breath," All Might said before jumping very high up in the air and screaming as he plunged towards Gigantomachia. Texas Smash!
The shockwave of the punch colliding against the giant's sternum was so powerful that it flattened all trees within a 30-meter radius around them and sent all the nearby villains flying. But the giant's endurance was otherworldly.
Before All Might could catch his breath from the powerful hit that he had thrown, Makia's large palm collided against his body, swatting him away like a fly, and smashing him violently into a residential building opposite the UA High, way outside the woods. "All Might!" Izuku yelled in fear for his mentor, and flew as fast as he could towards him.
But then his danger sense quirk flared, and Izuku just barely raised his left arm to guard his head before someone's foot smashed into his forearm.
Bang. Deafening gong-like sound reverberated as Izuku crashed painfully into the UA barrier, his body actually sinking into the metallic wall, leaving a human imprint in it.
Picking himself up with difficulty, Izuku felt chills go down his spine as he raised his head and looked at the 4 black Nomu creatures flying above him.
On the other side of the battlefield, Naruto left a trail of death and destruction in his wake, turning any small fry villain who tried to bar his way into mincemeat with his adamantine sealing chains.
They came here in a group of over 1,000 to attack the school. They are ready and willing to even kill children. He had absolutely no intention of holding back. Ever since he regained the memories of his past life and after he and his family had suffered so much at the hands of the villains in his current life, Naruto lost any sort of goodwill or tolerance he might have had for the villains. He wasn't like the rest of the pro-heroes who looked at villains as if they were misguided people who might be able to change. Naruto was looking at villains as if they were rabid animals that had to be put down. He wasn't fighting to capture like he did at USJ against the Riff Raps. Not anymore. Now, he was fighting to kill. Nevertheless, he wasn't going out of his way to kill everyone. He only killed those who tried to stop him. His purpose was to find the villain who was controlling those portals. Even after 2 years, he had yet to forget the villain who had facilitated the League of Villains' attack on the USJ. Speeding around the battlefield and killing villains by the dozens, Naruto found his target at last. It was a humanoid creature that seemed to be made of purple mist, a villain named Kurogiri.
Another sonic boom exploded as Naruto threw himself at Kurogiri at the fastest speed he was capable of. Turning his nails into vicious claws, Naruto sliced at him, fully intent on ripping him to shreds.
Kurogiri was simply incapable of reacting to that inhuman speed, but, at the very last moment, someone jumped in front of him, protecting him with his body. Naruto's clawed hand tore through the newcomer's flesh and bones, severing their right arm clean from their elbow, but, alas, Kurogiri managed to escape death by hair.
It hurts, the one whose arm he had torn off screamed.
Naruto's eyes grew the size of saucers when he saw the stump of an arm start wriggling and suddenly become whole again, regenerating instantly. Looking up at their faces, he paused in his tracks momentarily. He recognized their face.
Isn't this the League of Villains ringleader? The one who led the terror attack on USJ 2 years ago.
It was, indeed, Shigaraki Tamura, not that Naruto knew his name. However, unlike the strange young man wearing bizarre hands attached to his body that Naruto remembered, Shigaraki was hard to recognize these days. Shigaraki Tamura's hair was still white, and his face was still pale, but the rest of his body was extremely muscular, and his skin was entirely black. He looked like a Nomu.
I will kill you, destroy everything, Shigaraki let out an unhinged scream.
The ground under his feet exploded when he lunged at the blonde, a dark gray light flickering around his clawed hands.
Chapter 41. Besieged. 2. Previous chapter.
Shigaraki Tamura's hair was still white, and his face was still pale, but the rest of his body was extremely muscular, and his skin was entirely black. He looked like a Nomu.
I will kill you, destroy everything, Shigaraki let out an unhinged scream.
The ground under his feet exploded when he lunged at the blonde, a dark gray light flickering around his clawed hands. Naruto's first thought was to block Shigaraki's wild slash with his tails, but his survival instinct kicked in at the last moment, and he quickly threw himself to the side. I can't let him touch me, he thought, a serious look appearing on his face as he watched how, after narrowly missing him, Shigaraki's palm touched a tree trunk, reducing it all to dust in a second.
Shigaraki threw himself at Naruto again, but the blonde jumped to the side once more, and instead of engaging in a fight against him, he sped towards Kurogiri.
Although he had almost died the first time Naruto rushed at him, Kurogiri was on his guard now since he was expecting the blonde to attack again. This time, he was prepared. When he saw the boy charging at him, he opened a portal between them. With how fast he's running, he won't be able to stop his momentum in time. Kurogiri thought, planning on teleporting Naruto into the middle of the Pacific Ocean. His plans crumbled alongside his portal when Naruto's adamantine sealing chain stabbed through the portal, nullifying it, and he resumed his charge.
Not good. Kurogiri cussed and quickly opened another portal, this time for himself to escape.
But he was one step too late. Only half of his body managed to get through the portal before a golden chain wrapped around his waist. The purple portal suddenly ceased existing, and Kurogiri burst into a cry of agonizing pain when, together with the portal's disappearance, half of his body was ripped out by the spatial phenomenon too.
Just as Naruto willed his hand to turn into vicious claws, Shigaraki appeared at his back, howling like a revenant. Dai!
But Naruto ignored him completely, choosing to finish Kurogiri off. As long as Kurogiri was alive, there was no end to the number of villains and Nomu that could be teleported there.
Despite the fact that Naruto was wide open to his attack, Shigaraki didn't even get to touch his clothes. At the very last moment, a red fist smashed into his cheek out of nowhere. It was Kurama. His punch was so powerful that even Shigaraki's Namu-like body couldn't withstand the impact. He was smashed back through over 30 trees before colliding against the concrete wall of a building outside the woods, surrounding UA High.
In the meantime, due to the adamantine sealing chain wrapped around his waist, Kurogiri could not adopt an ethereal state. Since he's wearing armor around his neck, that has to be the most vulnerable part of him.
Bearing that thought in mind, Naruto stabbed his claws through the metallic brace around Kurogiri's neck, breaking it as if it were drywall. His claws pierced his throat, and he slashed upwards too, splitting his black fog-covered skull in half as well. He killed him right there on the spot.
He didn't have time to revel in his victory because, in the next moment, a huge appendage smashed into him, forcing him to raise 3 of his 5 tails as a shield to block it. He didn't suffer any damage from the hit, but the ground underneath his feet crumbled from the strength behind the enemy's attack. "You are strong," the creature spoke with difficulty before letting out a cackle as it retracted its large arm and sized him up. The moment that the second Nomu arrived, the other villains ran away in all directions, as if the devil were on their heels.
"A talking Namu," Naruto said, narrowing his eyes at the creature who was now grinning like a loon, exposing its large, inhuman teeth.
"I am not like the rest. I am a high-end." Suddenly, 5 red rivets stabbed through the self-proclaimed high-end Nomu's chest before lifting it up and throwing it away violently. "Move aside, he's mine," Shigaraki growled.
But the high-end's supposedly fatal injuries healed in the blink of an eye, and he landed on the opposite side of Shigaraki, behind Naruto.
"I said, go away, Nomu," Shigaraki screamed.
"You are a Namu, too," the high-end cackled. "You cannot beat him alone," the master said. "Work together."
Unknowingly, the high-end Nomu revealed an important piece of information. Shigaraki is a Nomu now. That would explain the weird way he talks. And how he's not injured despite Kurama punching him into the next week, Naruto thought.
Unexpectedly, a third black Namu flew over and landed at Naruto's left side. It was a female-looking humanoid creature with a muscular body and large breasts, but her exposed brain and disfigured mouth prevented anyone from having any sort of strange thoughts about her. Deafening gong-like sound reverberated as Izuku crashed painfully into the UA barrier, his body actually sinking into the metallic wall, leaving a human imprint in it.
Picking himself up with difficulty, Izuku felt chills go down his spine as he raised his head and looked at the 4 black Nomu creatures flying above him.
"They're different from the other Namu I've seen," Izuku thought as he stood up and used his float quirk to fly, to be on the same level as the Namu. He looked at them, trying to discern what kind of quirks they had based on their appearance. But he wasn't given much thought to ponder before one of the high-end Namu's hair-like head protrusion elongated and became spear-like, almost impaling him.
His danger sense flared again, and Izuku had to use the black whip to pull himself away in midair in order to dodge when another Nomu's eyes glowed and fired 2 laser beams from his eyes. "This isn't good. They don't even give me time to fight back," he thought when the fat-looking Nomu enlarged his 2 arms to enormous proportions and punched at him. He managed to avoid the fat Nomu, but its double hammer fist punch smashed into the UA barrier instead, creating a large and deep depression in it. The 4th Nomu decided to attack at that moment too and launched at him with an elephant-like charge, his body increasing and bulking up monstrously with every step it took. Detroit Smash! Izuku yelled and met the elephant Nomu's charge head-on, punching explosively. However, it felt as if he had hit a block of rubber because not only did his 80% one-for-all punch not injure the Nomu but his own fist was bounced back, making him lose his balance. Right as the other three Nomu lunged at him, intending on finishing him off now that he had revealed an opening, a large cloud of smoke blanketed the entire area, making them unable to see anything. It was another one of Izuku's quirks, smokescreen.
The boy thought he was momentarily safe, but that proved to be a mistake when the Namu who had fired laser beams from his eyes did it again and nailed him in the thigh, this time around seemingly not affected by the smoke in the least.
California smash. Izuku heard a scream.
Merely hearing the voice of his mentor filled him with hope and gave him renewed strength.
Following All Might's shout, the laser Nomu was punched in the head from above and slammed into the ground below like a rocket. While he was still in midair, All Might's right arm bulged beyond its normal proportion as he put his entire strength into it, intent on finishing the laser Nomu off with one hit. United States of. His words were cut off and his body bent like a bow as a gigantic fist caught him in full and slammed him violently into the UA barrier. It was Gigantomachia.
Luckily, the enormous villain didn't follow up on his attack. Instead, he cocked his fist back and punched at the UA barrier, aiming for the same spot that he had struck the first time. The enormous fortress of metal shuddered and creaked as Gigantomachia smashed a second, a third, and a fourth fist into it.
However, right before the giant could punch the wall for the fifth time, a landslide of sand appeared under his feet and swept them off the ground, making him lose his balance and fall on his back. Great job, Gaara Shonen. All Might said as he stood up and wiped the blood pouring out of his mouth with the back of his hand. Sensei, are you okay? The normally stoic boy asked in worry when he saw his teacher's battered and bloodied face.
All Might wasn't given the chance to answer because the fat Namu enlarged its arms again and punched in his direction.